I'm actually a two times failed entrepreneur. I actually left my very well paying jobs in Citibank and Standard Chartered to start a hedge fund twice. And both the times, because of minor things like global financial crisis, etc., it didn't take off. And then I decided to start a fintech, which by the way, I did not even know the meaning of at the time that I joined the company. So I guess I am qualified to talk about both change and courage. My name is Pratik Gandhi, and I'm the co-founder and chief operating officer for Nium. And for those of you who don't know what Nium is, it's fine. We don't spend much on branding. But essentially, it's a B2B money movement company. When I joined the company about 7 years ago, the company wasn't even called Nium. It was in fact called InstaRem, which is short for instant remittance. Because that's what the business was. We were actually transferring funds from one country to another on behalf of individuals. But wait, didn't I just say that we are a B2B company and not a P2P company? That's right. But then what changed? So what changed is the fact that just about the time that I had joined, a very large institution came to us and they said, we've got a very unique proposition for you. We have these small value transactions, $50 to $100 each, but tens of thousands of them at one point in time. And we want to make these payments into Malaysia, and our bank has shut us down. So can you help us? As I just said, our business was exactly the opposite, right? So we were in fact looking for individuals to send large amounts of transactions, large amounts of money, maybe once, twice in a month's time. The other thing is that in our business, regulations tend to vary from country to country. So Malaysia is obviously different than Singapore. We had no country presence in the country of Malaysia. Our platform, like I said, was more capacitized for individual transactions, not multiple transactions. And we didn't even know how to KYC a non-individual customer. In short, we had no clue of how to do this business, right? So, but being a startup, how could you say no to such a large opportunity? So we said, sure, we'll do it. And then basically scratched our heads trying to figure out what have we got ourselves into. But seriously, over the next few months, we created a platform which could take these kind of multiple transactions. I remember I used to go to Kuala Lumpur once every week, perhaps, on these day trips because we couldn't even afford to stay overnight. Try to take, these payment platform kind of agreements with some local player. Eventually, long story short, the business took off. So much so that today, B2B is 90% of what we do. The Instagram business still exists, but we are 90% a B2B player. And we also it gave us the idea to get into a card issuing business, which is also predominantly B2B. Now, I'm the first one to admit that there are other things that we would have tried which didn't work out, which is fine. For instance, we threw in our hat in the ring for starting a digital bank in Singapore. Until the time that our investors came back and said, guys, for various reasons, not a great idea, so we backed off. But the point I'm trying to make is that as entrepreneurs, we tend to get wedded to that one single idea that we had when we started the company, not realizing that by the time the company's become big enough, by the time it's got scale, the idea may already be obsolete, right? So be open to change. That's one. Second part of what I want to talk about is courage. So this was the time of COVID. COVID had hit the world. We had been negotiating on a funding round which spectacularly failed because of COVID. So we were running short on funds. we had to cut people's salaries by 30%. But we also realized that this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. You know that adage about how not to waste a crisis. So we said, let's start looking for M&A opportunities. Now imagine, right? So we are running short on funds and we are saying, let's look for M&A. As luck would have it, we had two companies to look at. One of them was a company in the UK, the other one was in India. Both of these two companies were in the travel sector, which, if I take you back a couple of years, was a very bad word in the peak of COVID. Travel was not something that people did. The company in the UK, in fact, had negative revenues, which means that they were refunding more for bookings that they had done earlier but are now getting cancelled than they were booking fresh ones, right? So, and this company came back to us and said, we want a large, one-time, non-refundable deposit, a fee, for you to just be in the fray. I can tell you, we had only a little bit more lying in the bank account. So if this deal hadn't worked out well, it would have been a bad time for us. But work out it did. Travel picked up the way that we had anticipated. And these two businesses are doing very well now, thank you. And they also gave us leeway in both Europe and India, where we were fringe players earlier. And we got fantastic teams to go with it. Again, safe harbor. I have to emphasize that courage of this sort should not come from being foolhardy, right? You need to be able to make these decisions based on whether you're calculating your risks properly or not. So in the back of our minds, for instance, we knew that we had investors who could put in money, valuations apart, in case things became really bad for us. So it was a risk well worth taking. The other part of the courage story is our ability as entrepreneurs to continue when the chips are down. If not for yourself, then for the sake of the rest of the company. What we've seen is that the path to success is never like this, unless you see it from a very distant kind of an area, right? So it's always like this. It's always curved. So I remember, and I've talked about the times when, we've had a couple of these near-death experiences. And I remember that the last instance quite vividly. There were 3 VCs, for various reasons, they refused funding at the very last minute. So we had been negotiating with them for quite a few months, so we were down to like a couple of months of funding only. And of course, we eventually got the funding, but for the period in which we didn't know what was going to happen, we were really sweating. But in front of our colleagues, we had to keep up a brave face. So, courage during adversity. The last part about what I want to talk about is actually a combination of the 2 words that I just said, which is courage and change. So, courage to change. And the first thing that comes to mind is people. As companies, when we start up, there are people you may have got who may not be scalable. So they're not going to be able to help you become a bigger company. At that point in time, it's very important to keep making the changes for the betterment of the company. As we grow as companies, it's very important to have everyone on the same page. It's like a symphony almost, right? If even one player is out of sync, then the whole harmony will go for a toss. So courage to change. I want to end with saying that there is never a single path to success. And I can tell you, I used to hate these books which used to come. They used to say how to be successful in this business and that business. And yet here I am talking about the 2 C's of my story. But I do hope that whatever stories that I've told you today have been useful to you. Thank you very much.